call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting Thursday, December 16th to order. And our next business is approval of the November 17 committee minutes.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any comments?
Good. You've learned from this quick.
She didn't want to get it.
Tuesday night to move on. That suitcase is half empty. I know. You should fill it up.
Since there are no comments, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And our next order of business is acknowledgement of the receipt of the comprehensive annual financial report, and I think we have just been given our copies.
Yes, and what I did is I put kind of a highlight of key items on the front of the report, and actually also referenced some page numbers. And also right before the meeting, we actually had the auditors give us a copy of their comments, so that's actually the second page in front of the report. And next month, the auditors will actually be at the committee meeting to actually discuss further the audit report. But we were thinking if you had any questions about maybe some of the financial numbers like we discussed last month, feel free to maybe get back with the finance department.
So they'll be
So
here.
we'll all be ready by the next meeting.
So they'll be here at the next
The
meeting,
January
Yes.
meeting.
which is
They will
the
attend.
3rd.
We'll talk about the time of
Okay.
the January meeting at the
I saw that was
later. We want to
Yeah,
touch
okay.
base with you on that.
All right.
Okay. But the thing is, we needed to get this and to, I guess, acknowledge receipt of it so that we can get that done by the end of the year.
And this committee does also serve as our audit committee for the city. So that's the other role you play, and we wanted to present this to you and get this to you in December.
Okay.
And then we'll be ready to have the auditors in and have more of a presentation and discussion in January.
And so we'll have this, and then if we already know about some things, or as we look over it briefly, we can get that to
So y'all know.
the staff so that we can kind of be prepared. Although, it's also good to hear their report too. That doesn't mean that we won't have anything further after they report. But I think this is a very good way to handle some of the highlights too.
If I could, one of the things that I might give you some guidance on as you look at this, if you think about your questions, is, as Mike said, try to separate them into the questions of how did this department spend that much money on such and such? That's a question for us. And the questions for the auditors is, how did you come to those conclusions about this, and about their comments on that? So think about, separate the auditor questions from just the routine, how did we end up there question.
And both of those are important.
Both are important.
So you're saying our questions are basically the why, but theirs is the how?
Pretty much. If you have a why, or how did you arrive at this number? Is this number correct? How did this department go over and this one under? That's something, if you want to go ahead and direct those to us before the meeting, we can go ahead and have answers for you on that. And that way you can spend the time on the auditors with more or less the bigger questions.
Okay.
When in doubt, get us the questions. We'll help route it to the right people, be it folks in the organization or with the auditor. We can help sort of be air traffic control for those and get those to the right place.
One thing that I'm thinking of right now is that expenditures that we experienced because of the flooding and response for that, I know we don't have much of anything back from FEMA yet, so how do we leave that as?
Well, those that were incurred in the last fiscal year are incorporated in what you'll see in our expenditures. We've got a process that we're in the midst of in terms of getting our reimbursement that we're eligible for back from the federal government. We got the first payment from them, about $185,000 about a week ago, and that's the first shot of those, but we expect to see the balance up to around $600,000 in total over the next several months. So that revenue gets realized in the fiscal year. Most of those expenses were incurred in the previous fiscal year just because of the timing of the event, but there's some that I'm sure carried over into this year as well. So that will just be a we have absorbed those as part of our operations, generally, is what has happened, and that revenue is one that we didn't budget for, but that will come in and we'll be able to track and show that as what we've incurred, and our staff did a fantastic job of tracking the eligible expenses, documenting those for the federal officials, and turning those in. So we have all of that paper trail to keep track of that revenue, and we'll track that revenue separately as it comes back in as a FEMA reimbursement. One comment I would offer for you is as Mike referenced these auditor comments that we literally just received this afternoon, and they are stamped draft because this is still a work in progress. A number of these we've already alerted you to. They're an element related to some of the budget amendments we made in the first quarter, and some other issues that we've already highlighted for you. There are one or two of those items that we are still in discussion with them about whether it's appropriate to identify as an auditor's comment. And so this could change, and this is a working draft in terms of their comments, and we'll have something more final for you between now and the meeting in January.
Very good. Okay, so do we need to officially acknowledge receipt, or?
I think that would probably be good just to... Yeah.
Okay, so I have a motion.
Second. I'm getting there.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now, consideration of the bid procedures for disposal of biosolids.
Have Mark and Brian address this for you.
Good evening. Brian Lukacs, Purchasing Manager. As you know, one of the byproducts, or the chief byproduct at the wastewater treatment plant, is what we call sludge. It's a biosolid residue left over from the treatment process. Our current procedure is to haul that to the landfill. The landfill we use is operated by Waste Management. It's clear out in Camden, a long way from here. We do that at a rate that was the result of a bid process done several years ago. That contract is ready to expire. The vendor, Waste Management, has agreed to extend that short term for up to 3 months, and we recommend that you accept that offer. And during this time, we will bid out that service once again, the landfill, what's called a tipping fee for the biosolid sludge. So we have kind of a long-term and a short-term issue. The short-term issue is just to extend the contract for up to 3 months. We recommend approval of that. It'll be at the rate that was negotiated, or not negotiated, excuse me, it was part of the bid process when we did that 3 years ago, and it's adjusted each year by the rate of the Consumer Price Index. So we would adjust it again effective January 1, and Waste Management has agreed to extend it. So that's our recommendation on the short term.
Question on that. So we're extending it for 3 months, but it runs out in December. We certainly were aware of this. Were we not bidding on it beforehand to get it in time for the expiration, or why are we doing the 3 months thing?
It would have been better if we bid it earlier in this year and anticipated that year-end contract expiration. It didn't happen, so the vendors being very cooperative. And
Did we just forget it?
We didn't necessarily forget it. There's a couple other options that we're looking at as well in the biosolids hauling, whether it be contracting it out or keeping it in-house. So we didn't do the work fast enough, I guess, to get to the point where we're rebidding.
So when we go out to rebid, are we going to rebid for different scenarios or just one?
well, that brings us to the longer-term issue. So the
Right.
short-term issue is to extend. The other issue in front of you is to let us present a strategy for how we go ahead going forward. The strategy that we're recommending is that we do two competitive bid processes over the next few months. One is for new tipping fees, just as we've done in the past. And the other is to explore the option of having a contractor provide the transportation, rather than using our own employees and our own equipment.
I would view that more of a sort of a medium-term solution versus long-term, simply because we're looking at biosolids management through the IWRP. And so there could be a whole slew of other alternatives through the integrated resources planning effort that may be the long-term picture versus, again, a sort of a moderate mid-term, medium-term.
This is a pretty significant issue in the integrated water plan. It's one that will be
Exactly.
looked at probably earlier in that process than later in the process. We've actually had that discussion already. And so there is sort of a short-term, medium-term, and longer-term piece to this that we'll work through.
Do we have any input at all, Ken? Do we have any input at all through the Sustainability Commission on is there any, are you a player in that at all, or is that just not?
Well, we've had conversations, but we're not really a player. I think the integrated water resource plan is the place to keep it, because we're going to go through all the analysis and technical data and recommendations, and they know that that's on the priority list that we need to address sooner. So it's going to come up front in that group.
But wouldn't that still probably be at least a year or maybe 2 out before we would?
The entire project duration is about 12 months. They're pushing this to the kind of the front end. They'll be doing a number of the components concurrently. So, we don't envision it taking a year per se to come out with the results of that.
But an implementation might go for a little
Yes,
bit.
right.
And I guess the true answer is it depends. It really does depend on the solutions and what we end up choosing and what makes sense for us long-term.
Well, the good thing is you're looking at different alternatives, and that's what we want. That's what I would want.
Another question I have about us contracting the hauling out, the legal responsibility that the city has for proper disposal of that. How does
we would
that?
require manifests from the landfill that they dispose the material at. So once we have those manifests back, if it's their responsibility to provide those manifests to us, so we cradle to grave, we know where our materials end up.
Okay.
But as I can see why you're saying that we're really not ready to commit for like a 3-year plan as we were before. But I do think, as has been stated, it is a good idea to address this early on in the water integrated plan there. Definitely. Okay. Well, is there
Move for approval.
a second?
And we're going to go through the scenario that you're going to bid both scenarios.
Yes, sir.
Correct. The thinking at the staff level is that we'll do them sequentially. That is, we'll bid out the landfill first, and then once we've made the award, you've made the award based on the results from the bidding, then we'll bid out the transportation so that we have bids that are for a destination specific.
Yes.
Exactly.
See how that would
We don't
be.
need a markup on the tipping fee. That's the way I would look at it.
Right. Yeah.
Let me ask one other question. The city of Columbia has no place to take their sludge now since they closed down Lewisburg, and I know they've contracted with a trucking company out of Mount Pleasant. And my question would be, is there any consideration for some synergy there to get a better price? So I'm not sure how you do it. It's just a comment, really. So not really a question, just a comment.
Well, one thing I guess I'll say as a comment back is that we would be very interested in them competing for our business, and if they were able to give us a more competitive price because they're already in the neighborhood, so to speak, and they could enjoy some economy of scale that they might be able to pass on to provide us with a more competitive bid. I think that might work well. But we'll just have to see how the market responds.
Very good. Any other comments? Are we ready to vote in? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. And we're looking at a change in organizational chart for the solid waste department and the water department. So we'll have those, I guess, these are in parts too. So I guess the first one would be just to reclassificate the number 5A, the reclassification of a refuse collector. Do you want to take that one first?
Okay, basically, the refuse collector is a position, it's a full-time position, it's a pay grade 6, and what I want to do is ask for you all to approve to move that to a pay grade 11, which is a solid waste driver operator position. The solid waste driver operator position requires a commercial driver's license. It requires a bit more experience in trucks, driving, operating equipment, and that kind of thing. This was basically a format or a form of a solid waste worker position. It was just a pay grade 6. And what I'm asking to do is move that to 11 so we can fill it with someone that would have some qualifications to drive, operate, and then also cross-train on our equipment.
The prior positions now become vacant, and sometimes when you have that opportunity to look at it and say, what do we really need in terms of the flexibility and skills that Becky's looking for, and that's what this would provide us, a little more flexibility in what our staff can do.
And now, since it's not just a specific person, you can go for that.
Exactly.
And we have enough budgeted in our budget this year for that?
I think you were saying it would be.
Yes.
Because I saw where that was, yeah. Okay.
But shall we just hear all these and maybe make one
Yeah,
motion?
let's do that.
Okay. The part B is the organizational changes for the water management.
The other, no, there is a
There's another
there's a second.
solid waste commission.
The second one, Tim, and I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I saw that, but I thought there was a C.
There's also a position called solid waste technician. Primarily, this person's job responsibilities were to repair and set, repair rollout containers and then set new rollout containers. Obviously, when we had the growth spurt, we had a lot of growth in the area. We needed a full-time person. It warranted a full-time position. That position is vacant right now. It does not warrant a full-time position. We do still have rollout containers that need repairs. We do still have some folks moving into the community as construction starts to get, pick up some. But the goal would be that we would have a pay grade 11 for this position as well, similar to what I mentioned for the solid waste driver operator when I talked about the refuse collector. Basically, the person could drive, operate, cross-train on equipment, but also help repair and set rollout containers as well. And that's something we're kind of sharing the responsibilities of now anyway.
Okay. So that finishes up the
Solid
A, so now let's go to B. Thank you. Yeah.
We have two, I guess, different categories as well that we're requesting a change in organization. The first one is within the cross-connection control program. Currently, we have a backflow inspector senior position at a pay grade 17, and we have two backflow inspector positions, both at a pay grade 16. Currently, the backflow inspector senior position is vacant. That person had been primarily in the office doing a lot of administrative tasks, whether it be data entry or manual filing of hundreds and hundreds of records that we need to maintain in hard copy format for audit by the state. In the past couple of years, we've had a number of people get certified through the cross-connection control testing certification program with TDAC. We have ample field staff to be able to fill in the gaps if we start running behind in the program, in the testings. So we view that backflow inspector senior position really could be best filled with a strong administrative staff person. So that's why we're requesting that we move that backflow inspector senior position to an administrative assistant position to perform primarily office-related tasks.
And what happens to the backflow position? I mean, the person that actually...
Currently, we can actually perform the testing and the inspections and the surveys with the two backflow inspector positions that we do have. The management and oversight of that position would be maintained by who's currently now the water distribution superintendent. So that's the way it currently is.
So if we move this to, what is it, pay grade 16?
Pay grade 17 to a 12.
Oh, 12, okay, I'm sorry, yeah, there.
Right, and the
This is-
17 position's
this
currently
is the-
vacant. So
that-
So this is the one that goes down, the
Yes, ma'am.
other.
The other one goes up.
Yeah.
The other goes
The other
up.
one's
That's why I want that one first.
Yeah.
That's why I put this one first.
Sounded good.
So then we still have 2 backflow inspectors, though?
Yes, ma'am, and we also have at least 5 other people, maybe 4 other people in our department that are certified
Okay.
for
Oh, they are.
testing. So we have a
So
pool
we're well-
of people we can pull from to
Yeah.
supplement.
So we're covered?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And this really is, that's been taken, a lot of the time it's been taken up by, just as you say, office,
Yeah.
Yes.
office data.
Yes,
Sounds
ma'am.
good to
Yeah.
me.
Okay, and
Okay.
now,
The second request we're looking at, we have had a long-term employee, William Sullivan, has retired last week. He served as the wastewater collection superintendent. He had served for over 26 years and did a wonderful job. So he's, try to provide a little background here. He was the wastewater collection superintendent. We have also another superintendent over water distribution, and I kind of view them sort of as in charge of the service department, the people who go out to the different residences. They fix the services and the main breaks and the sewer backups and things like that. So it's sort of the pool of staff that fall underneath them in many ways work together. They're in the same building. They use the same equipment. So what we're doing in having one of these superintendents retire, trying to take an opportunity and looking long term versus rehiring that position solely as another superintendent, is to look at having a superintendent over the service divisions itself, and then having 2 assistant superintendents to serve over water distribution and also over wastewater collection. The way that we've kind of been talking about it over the last several months is that it would be consistent with the assistant superintendents that we have at our plants. Pay grade 19 is where we are. We haven't gone through the HR process yet. We have the draft job descriptions already, but we've not gone through that process yet. But what this would do is provide for, currently there's 37 staff that serve underneath both of those superintendents, so their span of control is pretty far-reaching. So we are, and they spend a lot of time, they work far more than 40 hours a week, we're looking to actually provide adequate supervisory positions to manage the 37 staff that fall underneath them. So this is the reason why we're kind of going to this model of having a person over the 2 assistant superintendents, having the ability to manage and review quality control, and then have the 2 assistants primarily be in charge of operating the field crews, making sure they're going out and staying busy. So that's the reason why we're requesting this, I guess, layout or organization. We would request that we fill the wastewater collection assistant superintendent position, start that process immediately to hopefully fill Mr. Sullivan's shoes, and at some point in the future, and yet to be determined, I have in here fiscal year 2012 or 2013, come back and fill the water distribution assistant superintendent position.
you want to go ahead and talk about the rest of it too?
Sure, the financial impacts and all that, okay. The cross-connection control program, clearly it's, we're going to be, if you look, I have a table on the second page here that presents the pay scales. On the minimum side, it would be a cost savings on salary solely of about $8,500 a year. On the maximum side, about $14,000 a year. On the supervisory staff over the service divisions, we would be looking at removing 2 pay grade 20s, or removing 1, reclassifying another pay grade 20, and then adding 2 pay grade 19s. Again, that's an estimate at this point until we hear back from the Human Resources Department on the pay grade that is suitable for those job descriptions that have been developed. So those ranges, doing all the math on the minimum, it would be an increase to the budget of $43,000, and at a max, again, on salary alone of approximately $65,000.
So the one remaining would really take on the new title.
Yes, ma'am, that's where the way we've
But
had
then
it
you have
envisioned.
two, I want to say assistants, it does say.
Supervisors, yeah.
Yeah, but supervisory assistants, so that would be the two.
In terms of the immediate budget, there really, the way Mark described the timing to you, there really isn't an immediate budget impact because you're not looking to fill the water assistant superintendent or the...
Correct.
Until the
2012
next
or
fiscal year
2013.
or even a little later. But we didn't want to go down this path without clearly showing you where we were going. And I think Mark has correctly identified a span of control issue in terms of the oversight that we need to provide with 37 folks in our service department, that only having the two superintendents is stretching our supervisory ranks a little thin, and that adding another supervisor here, but pushing it down in the organization a little bit might be a more effective way. Plus, it puts one superintendent responsible for the overall performance of our service division. And that gives Mark one person to go to as opposed to somebody on the water side, somebody on the wastewater side. And what we're trying to do, not just in water, but across the whole public works segment, is to integrate ourselves a little more. We do some similar things. We use similar equipment. We have similar skills. And how do we better work across those lines as opposed to, that's not my job, you go see this department or this division and they'll take care of it. I can't work with that. And we want to better integrate ourselves and work across lines a little better, and I think this will help us do that.
Plus, I think it eliminates some redundancy, if I hear you right.
Within the two service divisions right now, we've done, a lot of cross-training between
I was
the
going
water
to say,
and
you would
wastewater
have to
side.
have that, wouldn't you?
Right, just to,
That works out well.
the availability of staff on weekends and nights, we need to make sure that everyone is at least aware of working on both sides of the service divisions. And we kind of view this as kind of, integrating, I guess, is a good term. It's kind of looking at those service folks as one group versus the wastewater side and the water side. And we know there's going to be some distinct, as you can see the organizational charts here, there's going to be some people who remain distinctly water and some
Because
people
I was
who
going to
remain
say,
distinctly sewer.
certainly they're not really the same job, are they?
No, ma'am.
No, not at all.
Their functions, the mechanics of their function, in many ways, was very similar between the two different divisions. This excavation,
Right, I could see things
laying
like
pipe,
that
so.
being very, are basically the same job almost.
Yes, ma'am.
But there would be some other parts of it that absolutely would not be.
There
the
are-
same.
Right. We would never use the television sewer inspector to do the water line. Never.
I don't want to.
Unless you use Purell.
Never.
So we're trying to take this opportunity. It was a huge loss for us when Mr. Sullivan left, but we're trying to take this opportunity to plan for down the road and not have to, if we replace that position and go to a model similar to this, then we would be, anyways, we're trying to move in that direction now.
Sounds good.
But you think it would be workable if we wait, or if we go 2 other years?
I believe so.
To fully implement it.
There are times when both superintendents are extraordinarily busy, and myself and the assistant director come in and help out, in the evenings and the weekend calls, simply because they get bogged down, and so we think we can manage it for a period of time beyond now. We don't view it an immediate necessity to hire both of those new positions currently, but we would ask to fill the wastewater collection assistant superintendent immediately.
Okay.
Okay, well, do we want to take both of these together then? Is there a motion to recommend both?
I move we recommend, that we recommend to the board that we approve all the staffing changes as recommended.
Second.
Any further?
I let her.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. And there are monthly reports, do we want to hit the highlights? or-
Sales tax. Sales tax. You like that?
Just want to hear the highlights.
If you recall,
Yeah,
if you recall, we took a lot of time talking about quarterly reports at our last meeting. These are kind of the monthly reports that we like to give you to kind of fill in, so you have your finger on the pulse, so to speak, of what's going on. The sales tax report, you saw Eric's memo
we
on
got that
that.
before.
You know, it's good news. It's still against a fairly low number that we had last year. I would tell
We
you
keep
that.
looking 2 years back to see if we're really...
Yeah, I know.
And we've actually added that to the memo now.
I do
to go back
appreciate that,
and give you a
yes.
couple of years.
Yes.
so that you
Yes.
put it in
Yes.
perspective.
Yeah.
And we have added the budget figure. To fast forward a little bit, the national figures for November have also been substantially better than last year. It's hard to be able to say yet whether that's good, but
Yeah.
they're substantially up from last year in high single digits. So if that trickles through to Tennessee and to Williamson County, that means it'll be good news for us next time. The B item, the fuel hedging report, I added also the fuel pricing report, if you will. You know,
That's gonna be interesting.
Our supplier gives Brian once a week an update on what the pricing is based on the price at the terminal that they fill their gas. And clearly it's going up. The bad news is it's going up. The good news is we're recovering about 60% of that increase through the fuel hedging contract. So it is working as we anticipated it to do, but we're still not pleased with the fact that the price is going up. Because when we went on the fuel hedge, we're losing at the pump. But it is softening the blow, and that was the purpose, to give us more stability in our budget. The conference center and the transit reports are routine. Again, I would just urge you to look at those when you have a chance. Again, for the conference center, which did not have a good year last year,
better.
it had a good year relative to other conference centers, but not according to its own record. We've had 2 very good months in a row, and that's very pleasing.
November looks good.
I did include the pension report this time. That's something we have not done in the
I'll
past.
talk with you some other time about a couple of numbers. I just didn't quite understand how they were.
That is the report that's given to us. That's the shorthand report, one-pager, that summarizes everything that our trustee gives us. And the 2 board representatives on the pension committee see those with regularity. I thought it might be interesting if you wanted to look at those as much as we've talked about the pension in this year. The next 2 items are things that I want you to think about a little bit more as we go forward. I put a couple of articles in there about online shopping.
Yes.
And one of the things I've done over the last year is I've saved all the catalogs that came to my desk.
Everybody needs a hobby, and
And I've torn out the center section where you order things. And I've marked whether you pay sales tax in the state of Tennessee or not. I didn't copy them for you.
That's fine.
But I'll pass them around. But
You know what I'm talking about.
out of about 40 catalogs, 5 collect taxes in Tennessee. It's clearly becoming a bigger issue. You know, when we see that sales tax across the board has gone up 4%, online sales has gone up 14%. And that's a routine number that I send to you in some of those statistics that I send out. It is of elevating concern to those of us who are hopelessly dependent on sales tax to fund a lot of our departments. It really is an issue, and we've more or less punted on this for the last several years while the economy was down. One piece of good news relative to this is Amazon announced that they're going to open a distribution center in Chattanooga. Amazon is really the big
Doesn't
hope.
mean anything, though.
Well, by having a presence in
They're here, but
Tennessee,
it's
they now have to collect sales tax in Tennessee.
Right.
But I thought
So-
this article didn't say they might or might not. It might or might not.
If you'll notice, the ones that are in here, the companies that have a presence in other states, it says if you live in California, New Jersey, or Maine, you have to pay sales tax. It's that nexus issue that we have. But I just want to take a chance to bring that to your attention. When you're talking to your neighbors and constituents, just remember, we're not getting our sales tax on it.
Buy local.
The last item, we just called a construction activities report. We've been focused a lot on building permits being down and facilities and road impact fees being down. This is more of a month-by-month, play-by-play determination to show you where we are on that, because we do know that on both of the impact fees, we've got a lot to recover in a short time. The numbers are good. They're obviously influenced by the big brewery permit that was pulled.
Yes.
But the good news is, 4 months into the year, or 5 months into the year, we're ahead of where we budget. Not just last year, but what we budgeted for this year. So that's it bounces around a little month by month, but you've got the numbers there. For building permits, road impact fee, and facilities tax.
And that's really real time, too. It's not lag time the way the sales tax
That's
is.
exactly right. Those are numbers that we know because we just cashed the check. And for the listening audience, all of these numbers are posted on the website with the meeting agenda. So if anyone does want to look at any of these numbers, they're out there and available.
Good.
That's good.
And, see, I've covered up my agenda. So the last thing then is to establish the date. The normal date would be January 20th, and so obviously there seems to be some.
One drawback we have is our chief financial officer will be at the government finance officers' annual meeting
Oh, yeah.
during that date, and especially since we have the auditors, and I'd really
Yeah, we
like
need that.
to have Russ here for that meeting.
That'd be good.
Where is it? That's an important question.
You'll see. I'm not-
Can I come?
It is not in Hawaii or someplace exciting. Nothing against our nation's capital.
Can I go and take his bags?
So that's,
So normally the 20th, so
and Russ is pretty well out that week, so we
we
can
do it the next week?
move it back a week if you'd like.
The 18th is available.
The 18th, which is
I
the
don't want to do it any
Tuesday.
sooner. I'd rather do it later. What day do you get back?
I'll be in the entire week. This meeting is the 19th, 20th, and 21st.
Okay,
So just
we-
the last part of that week
Let's do it
he's
the
in.
last week.
Well, the only thing is that
You can't do
the
it.
Thursday,
You can't do it on the Thursday because of the planning
Planning
commission.
You'd have to do it on
We could look at Wednesday. I guess we could look at Monday. I haven't looked at that date yet. We'd have to look
His
at
bonus is the 25th, yeah.
the 24th.
26.
20.
oh,
So
that's
the
whenever
24th or
the
28th.
commission
Is that
meets on
true?
the
More.
fourth Monday.
So that's not good.
There's a lot of material here. to look at.
Wednesday, the 26th. Would that be open?
Yeah.
How does that work for everybody's?
Okay.
Okay.
Would be possible. So, shall we say Wednesday, the 26th, and then let everybody maybe look, just to confirm that that would be okay?
Okay.
It'll be at 5 o'clock, normal time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Are you good?
I won't know what my
know
schedule
your
is
schedule,
until
okay.
right about this
Right
time.
about right on
probably,
that. So 5 o'clock was,
On Wednesday, the 26th.
we'll assume that works for everybody. Let us know if it
Unless you hear
doesn't.
something.
But we'll schedule it.
Start earlier if something happens with your class, that would be wonderful.
It would be.
Yeah.
It's just,
I'm just asking if your class, if it's possible to start earlier, that would be nice.
it's just, I know. And
It's the unknown right now.
It would be very nice for me too, you're right. Okay, yeah, but especially because that's an unusual time, that might.
But we'll have the auditors here that meeting.
We have verified that with
Oh,
them.
okay, so we had better, so we had better check about that,
We'll
too.
make sure that can work for them.
Okay. If not, do you want to look at that, what was it, that other Monday or Tuesday? I don't remember what that was.
Monday's good.
Be the 17th?
Well, not Monday
Monday, the 24th doesn't work for you because of the tree commission. We'd have to go to the previous week,
well, that
Monday,
might
which
be-
would be
No,
the
and-
17th.
That's how.
Oh, that's
What time is tree commission, 5?
That's right, that is holiday.
I think it's 5:30. And see, that's one of the, it depends on whether I'm going to be in Columbia or here,
Why don't you just
too.
get back to us?
And I just, yeah.
Let's
Let's try
let's
for them.
the
Let's try
26th
for
can
them.
work and
Hopefully
get back to the
that
other
works,
one.
because that appears to be good for us.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
Move adjourned.
Second.
All in favor? That was always popular.